All right, we're going to start 3 minutes early. Good. Since all of you have been here since 11:30. Are we taping now? Are we good? Yes. Okay. We have people online. God bless them. Well, first of all, do we have any veterans in the room today? No veterans. Well, for veterans who might be online listening, we wanted to wish a happy Veterans Day and thank those people who served our country. When Michael asked Kate and me to do this, we were really trying to figure out what would be most helpful for you guys. And we definitely came to the point of thinking that you all sitting in a room and listening to me pontificate on the real estate industry would be a waste of everyone's time. So what we wanted to do is actually talk about ways that you could throttle your business, especially as we look to a new decade. I mean, we looked up and it's October of 2019, November now. I don't even know how we got here. I don't even know how the end of the year happened so quickly. But it's not just that the end of the year is coming to a conclusion. You're coming to the end of a decade and the start of a new one. And real estate has never been more difficult than it is right now in today's environment. You have outsiders coming in for your jobs. You have disruptors, you have margin compressions. This is all really hard and scary stuff. So what we wanted to do today was put together a panel of people that have chosen to thrive in the most difficult real estate environment that you could ever practice in. You've all heard this quote, watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your habits. Watch your habits, they become your character. Watch your character, it becomes your destiny. And what we have today is 3 people in this panel who 12 to 24 months ago weren't even capping. And today their business is somewhere between $8 to $25 million a piece individually. Because they have chosen to follow their own destiny by making sure that their thoughts and their words and their actions and their character all aligned. And so that's what we want to talk about today, is because those are the keys that will get you to the place where you're able to throttle your business in a chaotic market. So with that, I'm going to let Kate talk a little bit about introducing some of the panel.
Well, if she knew me at all, she would know a little bit is not something I do very well. So I'm Kate Ferguson. I know a lot of you in the room. I'm kind of here because I should theoretically know quite a lot of you, and I'm here as the question wrangler for the last 30 minutes. So at the end, after the panel part is over and we're doing questions from the crowd, stick your hand up, let me know, and then I'll try and facilitate the questioning. And one of the reasons they have me doing that is because of the disc profile. Everybody in the room should know what their disc is, and if you know me even a little bit, you'll know that I'm a high I. I am not a D person at all. I do have drive, but I get very caught up in the detail, and that's not a D characteristic. So I'm a high I, it's all about the people. And I think for me, that has been my saving grace in this downward shifting market, because as all the electronics and the onlines and the algorithms come into play, the one thing they can't replace is interpersonal skills. And so I know my I inside out, and I know my adaptive behaviors, and I know how to be a bit of a chameleon and adapt myself according to the disc profile of my client. So I can be a high I, but I can also throttle it back when necessary. And I have done really good business with Ds and Cs when I've learned how to control my I. And I've weaned them onto the cult of personality over time instead of leading with it, which is what I do with my I's and S clients. So knowing your own behavior is really important, but knowing the disc profile of your clients is really important too. And you get that sometimes. Remember where your leads come from. One of my nicest leads came from an email introduction from my son, and I was thinking personal connection, high I started writing a high I email to this young man in Australia who was moving to Houston. And fortunately, I'm such a high eye that I wrote such a long email that before I had time to hit send, he had actually emailed me, because my son had done a joint email intro. And his was C to the wall. Miss Ferguson, I met your son, comma, named him. I know the name of my son. Who works at, comma, named the company. Funnily enough, I knew that too. But for him, it was all about facts and figures. This is who I am, this is how I got your name, and this is what I want to know, hit send. There was nothing warm and fuzzy or personal in it at all. So I hit delete on my email. I opened up his and I said, Dear Dustin, or I don't think I Mr. Herberted him, I'm pretty sure I used first names on him, but I said, thank you for your email, please see my responses below in red. Boom. I answered him like a C, and I coached him into the I part of his personality as I worked with him, but I got him as a client because I recognized him as a C and spoke to him accordingly. So I'm a very passionate believer. That was a $500,000 piece of business and 2 referrals, plus my son continues to refer me because I treated his referral the way he needed to be treated. So knowing your disc is vital to your business, and these personal skills are our answer to a lot of the disruptors in our industry. So, disc profiles for the panel. Paige, is yours up there or not?
We started with mine. And those of you who have sat through my classes and seen this, I'm sort of a nothing and a low-ish D. So my stress behavior is I move into more of a C because I'm very comfortable knowing that there is a rule and a hard fact and figure of why it is right, and therefore that gives me comfort. But I am, we like to say, I have no personality, is the way my disc profile reads.
I would read that as more of being an all-rounder. Would you all? I would say that was an all-rounder. And just to interrupt her, which I should not do, I did forget to say in my preamble, please put away your phones, because taking a personal call during this meeting would be highly disrespectful to our panel and would also disrupt the taping because it is being recorded. So phones away. If you've got your laptop up for taking notes, obviously that's fine.
All right, we're going to get Mr. Brad to tell us his story, how he ended up in real estate, how his production's looking, and a little bit about his disc.
Hi, thank you all for coming today. So I am a high S and then an I, and actually some C as well. So as you can see from my natural to adapted, natural I'm an SI, but the C really comes out when I start having to, work with people and figure things out. It's I'm very data driven, and so that's how I find I work. But obviously my D, my ability to be dominant, it just isn't really there. I work more on developing relationships and finding a way to personally connect. A little bit on my numbers. So this year I'm on track for about 8, maybe 9 million in sales. And then on calls, so that's the most important thing you'll hear us talk a lot about today. I make about 100 calls to unique people a month, so that's individuals. Then about 300 total calls, to give you an idea of kind of where we start from on the calls that we should be making. And then I have about 12 calls per meeting, and then 3 meetings to get 1 closing. So that's a little bit about my numbers. So who's next?
Brad, real quick, tell him your production level. Your production level before you started with us.
Yeah. So when I first came over to KW, I was in real estate for about 4 years prior, and I was averaging about 1 to 1.5 million a year. Working primarily my sphere, maybe 4 or 5 deals. Now I'm averaging about 24 to 30 deals a year. And what made me really want to get into this business is getting started. I bought a house that I probably shouldn't have bought. There were a lot of problems with it that have since come about, and I really wanted to help other people avoid some of those mistakes. And so I've really become educated on the inspection process and how I can best serve my clients.
Perfect. All right, Miss Courtney.
So I am clearly very different from Brad. I am a very high I, very high D. I don't even know if we talk about the others because they don't really seem to exist in my world, and I don't really rely back to them. Little bit about me. I was recruited by Cindy Bluestein. I'd started as my beginning of my career as far as doing anything. I did apartments, and then from apartments I graduated to new home sales, and then I realized I'm on the wrong side of the table. Let me help these people and go wherever they need. So I became a realtor, joined Keller Williams. Cindy found me and brought me over. Thanks to her, I know a lot of you know her. Joined the team. For me, being a high I and a high D, they kind of go hand in hand. I taught group fitness, that's how I met Cindy, so I'm very used to making the personal connections, and I think that's very important in the world that we live in. But I'm also very comfortable with kind of driving a deal, getting things done. When I started, I will actually this year double the production that I have ever done in my entire real estate career since I joined the team. So that for me is a huge, huge win, and the accountability and things that have come with the team has helped me to get there.
Well, something in the accountability in the team setting must be working, because Courtney and I were accountability partners when we were both I think we've been agents about the same time here, right? So I think it was our second year, and we were accountability partners. And boy, I wish she'd shown me this because I spent a lot of Thursday mornings working on this bit right here, not realizing that we were both doomed to fail. So we parted as friends, but not successful accountability partners. We were both too high I. We had too good a time. So there's some magic in what you're doing if you can get systems and procedures out of that.
So Courtney, tell us about your numbers.
So I am regularly making, 100 calls to new people every month, because we see the push and we all inspire each other to do more. Meeting at least 10 new people per month just to help deals keep going. I will be very honest, don't know my exact numbers because that's just who I am. I am very much so, I put my head down and I do the work. And that's, you will tell me, they tell me all the time, Courtney, do you want to do this? Yes. Do you want to do that? And sometimes I have to say, okay, I need to stop, but if you give me a goal and say go, I will put my head down and I will keep going until I get there. Or past it. Usually past, because I don't know where the wall is. So that's just me.
All right, Lisa.
All right. So my story is a little different. I've been a realtor for over a decade, and I was an individual agent for a while. And then I started a family, and I decided I couldn't do it all. I didn't want to do it all. And at that moment, I became a showing agent, and that was probably one of the best things that I could have done. In the process of doing that, I worked alongside with Paige for many years, and it gave me the skill set and the knowledge that I could not have done just doing this on my own as an individual agent. And there's no way that, as Paige formed a team, to be able to do 25 million or be on track for 25 million without being in those trenches and understanding all the hard work and all the learning and all the calls that and seeing Paige do those things day after day and year after year, and then seeing us do it to see that volume go up has just been incredible. So my story is still continuing, and 25 million is this year, and we'll see where next year goes. But my disc is obviously very different than these two sitting next to me, which I think goes to another aspect of why a team is sometimes a good fit, and accountability, because we all bring something different and we all have different experiences. And so while we're all making 100 phone calls a month and meeting probably 10 new people, if not 15 to 20, somewhere in that range a month, that's what's bringing us those new businesses. And why I pick up the phone every day to do this is because I enjoy what I do, and I want to be better than I was yesterday. And so the way to do that is to have good clients, and the only way you get good clients is to meet more people and call more people. So
So the running theme here that I think you're hearing is accountability and picking up the damn phone.
I think another thing that that I hope you all can see is that amongst these 4 profiles, and I had my back turned so I didn't see mine, but I know I'm a high I and a reasonable S. I can't remember what the rest of mine is. Oh Lord, that is a high I. That's a little shocking to see. But I think what's really important for everybody to notice is that we have a high I, we have a high D, we have a high C, and we have two people who are really strong even across the board. So it doesn't matter what your disc is, there is a way for you to be successful in this business.
I totally agree. Well, let's have a little bit of discussion before we open up for questions. And we'll just kind of go down the row here and let you guys chat through things. What do you see as the biggest threats in the current industry?
So for me, I think the biggest threat is the iBuyer programs. Now, it's not necessarily the way you think of that. So when we talk about the iBuyer programs, it's the Zillow, Open Door, various forms that people can just click a button and say, what's the value of my house? And then they sell, and that's just how that goes. So the thing that's going to be the biggest threat is us as agents not being ready and willing to take that on as something that can be a tool for us, because not all sellers are meant to sell their home in a traditional fashion. There's a lot of sellers that the iBuyer programs do make sense. And as an agent, you can be there to help guide them through that. Walk them through how they can present their house the best for these iBuyer programs. And sometimes you're going to be able to find a way to make some money off of that. But the important thing is that you recognize that some people just aren't meant to sell their home in a traditional fashion, and it's just going to end up causing you more problems. Those kind of people their house probably needs some work. It's probably going to sit on the market for 6 months, or your time's better utilized elsewhere. So that's where I see one of the biggest challenges for us, threats for us as agents, is not recognizing that this new platform that's out there, it's not necessarily an enemy. It's a tool that we can utilize and best suited for our clients.
For me, I'm seeing a lot of listing agents reducing their commission and offering these low service listings. We know the market shifted. We know that it's a slower moving time. Sellers are recognizing this. And I think that it's important that you recognize that this is out there, but that you also as an agent recognize your worth. And that comes very important to when you are talking to a client who's asking you to reduce your commission, that you know the difference between what a low service or reduced commission agent is offering and what you provide in full service. So that means you aren't backing out, you aren't getting nervous as it's been on the market for time and time again. You're having the confidence to have these important conversations with your sellers, because I think in this market, as it softens, educating your client on what's going on is where you're going to separate yourself from a discount agent or a low service agent.
I think they both covered it quite nicely. Reducing commissions, I see that, and especially when representing people on the other side, I can see the level of care that the other party, whether it's the seller or the buyer, they're receiving is so much lower than what I think a buyer or a seller should receive, that reducing the commissions and bringing that into that forefront of the conversation when you first meet with a buyer or a seller, to build on your value and how you can counsel them, and to make sure that you're doing that not from only on day one, but on when you have those listings that are hanging around for a little while, that you're still counseling them and bringing them the best data and information on day 94 and having those tough discussions. And I don't think that they will get that with a reduced commission, and sellers and buyers don't know what they're missing unless you address that up at the front. And same thing with the iBuyers that understand what they do and how they work, so that when you go into a listing presentation, you already kind of drop the bomb on them, and so that they won't either look at that, or you help counsel them through how to do that, and you can do it better and you can still get them more money. So I think it's really about tackling how much more value you can bring and why you're worth that extra money, and then you don't even get asked.
Lisa, what are you doing now, or how have you shifted as you've seen this industry change over the past 24 months?
Definitely having more conversations with my clients, and I think in previous people just wanted to do more texting and more emails, and I find that picking up the phone or meeting for coffee or having your tour and then sitting down and discussing where things go, it helps build that relationship and the loyalty to keep them coming back and to continue showing that you're listening to your clients. And so I definitely having more conversations than just when I don't have time, all I really want to do is have that email that I can fire off, and I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to have that half an hour discussion because it's what's right for them. And
To make it more relational and less transactional.
Yes.
As part of adding value. Courtney?
I would say, especially in this market, because it's a little bit scary, it's slower, there are concerns. And so previously, I know a lot of us did this, I did it, you just are scared that if you let that current client go, or if you tell them something they don't like, that they will leave. And I have stopped operating out of fear, because it is truly fear, in having the confidence to say, this is what I know is right for you, or this is what is happening, or this is the information I know you need to know. And having confidence with that and being okay with, they say, you know what, I don't want to do that, I don't want to work with you, and being okay with that. So I think knowing your worth, knowing your data, being willing to step out, be bold, and give the client the information they need or want to hear or don't want to hear, but what is truly out there in the market, rather than, oh, it's all going to be fine, we just wait for a buyer and we're not going to price reduce. I think it's important in this market to really say, this is the data, these are the facts, these are the decisions we need to make. And then if it's causing you heartache and if it's giving you heartburn and you're thinking about it at night and you're complaining to your spouse or significant other, there's something that says, let it go. I might be living that a little bit, but let it go. So just that, yeah.
Frozen 2 is coming out this Christmas.
I can't wait.
For me, it started with actually taking bold about 24 months ago, and that's really what started this entire shift for me. It gave me the confidence to go and talk to somebody like Paige and about how I could better my business, and then taking that next step and the next step, just realizing that you got to get outside your box. You got to be willing to take on, extra challenges and see where it goes from there. The other thing I've been doing is I track every single call, text, meeting, because not everybody that you're talking to right now is going to buy next week. Many of them are not going to buy for a year. And if you're calling them every single week to talk to them, they're going to run. They don't want to spend time with you. They see you as a clinger, somebody that's just looking for the business, that you just want their money. You've got to recognize that everybody's on a different timetable, and somebody that you talk to now, you may not talk to again for 6 months, but if you keep those notes, here's what I talked to them about then, here's how old their kids are, all of those kind of things, because then it immediately gives you a reference to, here's who this person is, here's what I can say to immediately get myself back in the door, and then you gain their trust. And that's really what it's about, is gaining trust and learning how you can work with people even if they're not buying, next week.
Yeah, to that point, I'll just add, and you've heard me say this, on average, the life cycle of a buyer is 9 months. So it takes 9 months for them to incubate until they're ready to pull the trigger on something. So that means you've got to be prepared to have a 9-month relationship with somebody. And, that's pretty good. I mean, you're not asking them to get married and spend a lifetime with them. 9 months. So when you meet them at that open house, they're usually at the beginning of that journey until they get really hot and bothered and ready to do something else. So at that point in time, you're probably calling a little bit more. But if you are making people talk to you all the time for 9 months, which is why we talk about having databases and drip campaigns and ways to do it in different ways to expand and have a relationship for 9 months that seems very authentic and organic instead of a forced relationship of, you will buy from me. I'm watching you on Facebook and commenting on everything that you do so that when you are ready, you are mine. You've got to find a way to have relationships. That is what is going to trump your business. It is about relationships. Technology cannot have relationships, at least not at this point. So as long as you're able to control and have the relationships, you will win the business.
Were you wanting to talk about KPA?
Not yet. In about three questions, yes.
I may be on the wrong page, but I don't think so, but we'll see. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the downward shifting market, and yet you three have been extremely successful. So what would you say are the top 1, 2, or 3 things that each of you are doing to create success?
So for me, it comes down to actually having a little bit of a competitive nature. The three of us, so we've got a tracker for each of our calls, and so we can see for the three of us, well, and we've got some other people that we're working with as well, but how many calls we're making a week, per month, and sometimes when you get behind a little bit, it takes that accountability, realizing that there's somebody else out there competing with you. And it doesn't have to be competing for the same business. It's finding a way to work with each other to create that drive and learn how, you can feed off of each other's success. So, and that's one of the big things the three of us do as well, is we try to share our successes, because everybody hears about, the market's this, the market's that, whether it's good or bad, but hearing those successes and feeding off of it has been something that has really helped drive things as the market's been tougher. The last thing is kind of creating a team of vendors that you really trust. So inspectors, mortgage companies, just a wide variety of people that you've got in your phone, that when somebody says, I need this, you've got it ready to go, because then it immediately sets you up as an expert. You've got the people, you're not looking for the people in the phone book or online, whatever it may be. You've got them ready to go, and you're ready to help people as they need that.
And 100%, the accountability, I think that's huge, especially in this market. Maybe you find someone in the office, maybe you do check your disc to make sure, because Kate and I, maybe not 2 I's, but maybe you find an I and an S or a C, and you guys get together and you are accountable to each other, and you're not fighting for the same business, because there is plenty of business out there, but maybe you text each other. I know sometimes we'll be like, hey, I'm almost close, and I'll be like, oh God, it's usually Brad on my tail, and Brad will, come out of nowhere. You leave for an hour, and Brad comes back, and Brad's made like 20 calls, and you're like, I was just gone for an hour. So having that to push you and drive you, and having somebody that you can communicate with, and also having somebody to give you information. Maybe you have an accountability partner that you work the same area, but you have questions, so having someone to help you in that sense. And also having a priority list for me has been a big deal. So it keeps you focused on the day, especially in a downshifting market. You can get caught up in how much you don't have, how much isn't going on. But if you prioritize your day to set you up for success, I think that's important. So whether you spend the day learning your data to start, and then calls after that so you can speak knowledgeably, but making sure that you've got an objective for each day. So it's not just, today I don't have any closings, today I don't have any buyers, but it's like, what am I gonna do to get myself that for the next day or for next week?
Lead generation. How do you get to 8 million, 10 million plus? It's lead generation, and I think organization, because once you actually get people under contract, more than one, you start to need some way to track it. And so for me, it's checklists and organization and phone calls that has helped me survive this slower market, or changing market, I suppose.
Definitely changing. So you've talked a lot about the calls, and that's been really important for each of you to grow your business. What is there one thing that if you stopped doing it now, it would impact your business negatively? I mean, more specifically than lead generation.
I think there's several things. I don't think it's just one. For me, it's, while we're making a lot of phone calls, and none of this, we've all been at this for long enough, and especially it's scripts. Like, they talk about this year after year, and person after person talking about scripts. And so figure those things out and write them down and say them out loud to somebody other than yourself. And so for me, if I stopped practicing that, and I think if I stopped caring and wanting to make sure that I'm doing the right thing for my clients, that would absolutely stop my business like a red light.
I'm just going to tag on to what Lisa said in scripts. Scripts are huge. It's not just practicing the script, it's having someone else give you feedback on how the script sounds, because you think you sound one way, but how someone else receives it is completely different. And so there have been times, I'm a fast talker, doesn't bother me, but somebody else would receive it as she's trying to fast talk me, she needs to slow down, have a pause here or there. Yeah, so it's the whole, having that accountability, but also when you get to a client, you get to a call, whether you're on the phone or in person, that conversation comes up, you don't struggle. You've practiced it so many times internally, you know the words are right, and then all of a sudden it just blah, 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 and you're like, oh, that came out beautifully. And then the response from them is just like script practice, and you're like, this is script practice. And having that confidence with your clients goes so far.
So you've heard both of them mention script practice. The three of us are actually on a script practice team together. So every week for 30 minutes, the three of us get on the phone and we go over a script together. And we give each other feedback and we talk about, here's what you did well, here's where you can improve. And then we take that for the next week and try to make it better. And all of us can be doing that. You find somebody that you think you can work well with, you set a time every single week that both of you are going to be available, and you stick to it. That's the accountability and making sure that you're, bettering yourself, because having somebody that's in the business that you can talk to about that is just, that's where it's at. Then making the calls. So all of us have talked about making 100 calls a month, and sometimes, trying to make even more than that. But when you break it down, let's say you work, 5 days a week, then you're looking at what, five calls a day. And that's 30 minutes, an hour. All of us have time for that. And it's really what you need to do to start making yourself a better agent and getting yourself more clients, because making the calls is what it takes.
So I know that we throw a number out of 100, and I think if you're a new agent, or actually even a well-experienced agent, sometimes 100 seems so huge. And if you just make 2 more phone calls than you're making now, and then you keep building onto it and you keep tracking, you're going to see some progress in that. And so then 5 more phone calls, because gosh, last week I made 10 calls. That's no big deal. I can do 10 calls now. So now you're like, oh wow, I'm at 15. And then all of a sudden you're at 20, and then 40. And then you're like, well gosh, I might as well get to 50, because who doesn't? And so then all of a sudden you're at like 80. Well, shoot, what's 20 more to get to 100? So I think you just start and kind of build on it. So don't get stuck that we're doing 100. You may right now only need to be doing 20, and then you'll end up probably at 200 and going, Lisa, you're slacking. So.
Yeah, they certainly didn't all start making 100 calls a month. And what Lisa made a very good analogy, which pinged my brain. I used to do weight training in high school, and I certainly couldn't clean and jerk what I started with and what I finished, because it's a muscle memory and you learn it, and then you're like, I can do this weight. Okay, now I can put 5 more pounds on. Okay, now I can put 10 more pounds on. And you work through it, which is what you do with the calls. Because I guarantee you, if I asked you who in this room absolutely loves to make phone calls, I'm guessing there's probably not many hands. Any hands? Anybody? Okay, we got one. This panel doesn't love to make phone calls. They do not get up in the morning and say, I cannot wait to get on the phone. But they have reframed their brain on how they see that exercise, so that it's not punishment, and it's not I dread doing it. It is just merely a function of my job, so that I can accomplish what I mean to accomplish. Would say that that's right?
And if I can tag on, so it's amazing, like I mentioned, I'm put your head down and go, go, go. And when I first started making the bigger call volumes, I'd get a mean, nasty person on the phone, and I'd be like, I don't want to call anymore. And And then I was told, just go outside, take a walk, come back in, try again. And so once I put my head down, it was amazing. It may not even be that activity in particular, like let's say that you did do 20 calls in a sitting. It may not be that, but I feel like sometimes the real estate gods are out there and they see you're working, and something that you may have called like months ago or forgot about, well, all of a sudden later that day, hi, I want to buy a house. And I didn't call you. I don't know why but okay, let's do it. So I feel like if you do the work, which you have to do the work, the reward will come. And that's just what generates you and gets you going. And as you see, wow, I was so slammed. What got me there? And if you're tracking, you're like, I made all those calls.
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
I'm reading the brain waves, I think. You can tell me if I'm right. First of all, are you calling your own people, or is Paige giving you the people to call?
It's their leads.
Okay, so you all know 100 people, so you can all make 100 calls if you know 100 people. And if you don't, you've got to work on growing who you know. And then the second question is, when I teach Ignite, we do a little bit about the 4 C's, that you have to make a contact, you have to make a connection with the contact, you have to cultivate them before you can close them. And that feeds into the buyer cycle is about 9 months. So when you're making these calls, are they all, and the scripts you're using, are they always real estate calls, or are they more, we're cultivating a connection kind of a call?
And I can take that. It depends. There are times where, and it depends on what that lead has done and taken action. If that lead has clicked on a new property that we've sent them, it's a real easy script call that says, hey, we sent you that information this morning. I know they've seen it. I probably don't need to tell them that I know that they've seen it. But hey, sent you some information this morning. What do you think about that house I sent over? So that's a real easy script. I mean, our scripts are not, we have variations of what scripts are. And y'all, scripts are nothing more than the words that you use to say to get your point across. And we call them scripts because that's Keller Williams speak. But if somebody says, hey, Karen, why should I hire you? And you've not practiced that answer, you're going to flub it up. We flub it up. That's why we practice each week, because at some point in your life, somebody is going to ask you a question that you've already written the script for and the answers. So our scripts change. If we're having an event for clients, then the script is, hey, I'm actually just calling to invite you to something. If somebody has sold their house, hey, just calling to see how things went after the move-in. Did everything go well? Well, actually, the water's not on, and da-da-da-da-da. So then I'm able to provide additional value. So the scripts are constantly changing depending on what actions they have taken and where they are in the situation. Would you say that's fair? Yep. So I know we hammer the thing about calls, and I wish I had a fairy dust and say you don't have to do that and just leads show up in your inbox and everything's great, but it doesn't. And calls are your way to relationships. That is why these people are sitting on the panel. It's why they have the business they have. It's because it's about relationships. Mo Anderson says you don't have a problem that 20 client contacts per day can't solve. It's pretty true. It's pretty true. And in our situation, these guys, when we say they're making 100 calls a month, that sounds like a big number. That's 3.2 calls a day. I mean, my mother calls me that much. So it's not a lot. It's not a lot. So we wanted to talk a little bit about this kind of, you've got the lead on the phone, you've got this relationship. Brad, tell us about how much time daily you spend committing to convert or developing that relationship.
So for new people that I'm speaking to, I typically try to set out about 1 to 2 hours a day that I'm just focusing on those calls plus sending them follow-up information. And that typically I try to do in the morning. Sometimes it doesn't always work that way, but I try to time block to make that happen. One of the things that I wanted to mention, actually, Kate, I kind of took something from her, and it made it so much easier to call people. I just said to myself, they know me, they like me, they want to do business with me. And it really has evolved. Even people I don't know, if you just say that enough, it starts to just become natural. And so learning that from Kate was really helpful for me in just taking this to the next level and making the right calls. But yeah, about an hour to 2 hours a day is what I spend on those new leads.
Okay, Courtney, my question for you is, what methods do you use to develop the relationships? We know how much time he's spending a day. What methods are you using?
So it also depends on the person, but conversation, calls is very important. Showing them value, but also I really like to meet with them. I think there is something invaluable about eventually at some point you earn their trust and they want to meet with you in that face-to-face meeting. It's easy to hop in a car with somebody and drive them all around town, not in the business for that. I am in the business for sitting down with someone, learning about them, really listening to them, repeating it back to them, and then optimizing my time and theirs. And that I found has helped me be really successful and helped me weed out what I don't want to work with versus the people that will sit down and meet with me and will later listen when things get hard.
And Lisa, when do you find the best time to convert your leads or spend time building those relationships is?
Anytime. I will say I got a sales call at 7:30 a.m. the other morning, and I about told that man where to go. So I would say don't call before 8. That's my personal rule. I personally find that weekends, I get a lot of people that pick up their phone on numbers that they don't know or programmed into their phone on Saturday and Sunday afternoons. And so I talk to a lot of people on the weekends. And I also find in that 4 to 6 p.m., people are kind of checked out at work. They're either driving home and they will call and they get chatty and you will learn more things, and all of a sudden you'll end up with a referral, or you'll end up setting a meeting and talking about some real estate. And I also think, building off of what Courtney said earlier about fear, I think there's always this mindset of I'm afraid to make a phone call, and you go, what's the worst thing that can happen? And I think it's just a different mind shift of what's the best thing that could happen, that somebody could pick up and go, gosh, you're right. I did see that house, and yes, I'm thinking about buying a house. And so it's just flipping that every single time you pick up that phone to say, what's the best thing that can happen?
So we know you've got to make the calls, and we know that Brad's highly competitive, and I know Courtney well enough to know that she is super competitive also. Lisa seems a little more chill, and yet her numbers are totally through the roof. So that's an interesting bit of data that we're going to have to extrapolate. Accountability is is really important. You're all acknowledging that, but you're not all sitting in the room together. So how are you only using each other for accountability, or do you have other accountability partners? And what are you focusing on when you have an accountability partner?
So it's finding like-minded people to work with, but maybe not just people that are in real estate. Sometimes you've got to have accountability with maybe your spouse, or maybe a parent, brother, sister. Finding somebody out there that you can be held accountable to and say, here's what I did today. I feel that I had a good day, and then just, taking it from there and realizing it doesn't necessarily mean that you're competing with somebody, but if you always are being held accountable to somebody else, it gives you that extra oomph, like this is what I need to do today to reach my goals tomorrow.
And I think accountability there's so many different levels in our business of how your accountability can be. And it can start at home with your spouse, and maybe you just have a goal for the year, and maybe you break down your goal for the month because you see that person every day. And it can start there. Or maybe if I'm not married, but I talk to my mom all the time, and she knows what my goals are. And so she's another person to help keep me accountable. So don't feel like if you don't have a spouse, that's okay. You can still talk to a family member or maybe a really close friend.
Or your dogs. I talk to my dog.
My dog doesn't understand. He just understands walks and treats. It's not very helpful. But also having someone, I think, also sometimes a lender, because if you kind of get in touch with a lender and you kind of say, hey, I'd like for us to do this together this year. I know that there are lots of lenders that are out there willing to help you, want to know about your open houses. If you feel like you've got a good relationship with someone, I would be shocked if a lender says, I don't want to have any accountability to you, and they can help you in that sense. And then also having a partner in the office, somebody I would say probably not like-minded, because me and Kate were a lot alike, but maybe a little bit different, to have that structure. And to yourself on a daily basis, a board is a great reminder of what you've got going, what you've got doing, and then also a daily priority list of that accountability to yourself, and not letting you get off track, because there are lots of shiny objects that will take you away. But coming back to that handwritten list every day is something that I do, and it helps me with my accountability when it's just be myself.
I think accountability groups are invaluable. I've done them my entire time that I've been an agent, and usually an odd number for me seems to work well, just because you get more people's opinions, and it becomes less about having coffee with your friend and more about let's talk about numbers and let's talk about the issues, and where every single week you're having that meeting or that call with somebody, you're all of a sudden going, gosh, I need to show up. And because if they're showing up and I didn't show up, then I'm not bringing any value to the table. And so I think accountability. So we're in our own little thing here, and it's helpful when you get frustrated and you need to vent, or you have an issue, or you just haven't. Real estate is ever changing, and there's so many things that you don't know, and so somebody else has been there, and so they may know a source or a lender that can handle a foreign buyer or something that you just don't have. So I think having an accountability, and KW is great at everybody here. The culture is there's enough business. No one's gonna stab you in the back, at least my experience, and that's what I think is great when you find some people that you can trust.
I would also add, because I know all three of them do this, is they all have a priority list daily. And I know they've mentioned that a little bit, but they know exactly what they need to be doing when they need to be doing it. And that's important, because in real estate, we get a lot of stuff that comes at us, right? So it's urgent, but maybe not important. So you can get really far down the day and lost in the weeds and not have ever tackled the things that you really needed to get done. So that offer that you were supposed to write that morning, you were putting out fires, which really you didn't really have to do, but that was urgent and in your face. So you never really wrote that offer until that evening. Oh gosh, but then somebody else came along and put another offer in, and your client missed out, right? We've all had that happen. So we like to use the rock example, where you've got you've got a jug and you've got sand and rocks, and you got to get it all in there. Well, if you put the sand in first, there's no place for the big rocks. So you have to put the big rocks in first and then pour the sand in. So every day they are identifying what their big rocks are and then pouring in the sand around that. And I think that's really important, especially when you're doing the kind of level of production. Sort of like learning how to lift weights. That's part of the way that you grow your mind, because it is important to learn a palate for the stress as it is to just do the work.
And it helps make sure that the details don't get, fallen behind, because you get busy with something and you forget. So writing things down, checklists, priority lists, absolutely.
So what do you say to one another at your accountability meeting for someone who has not met their goals? Because I've been in 5 or 6 accountability groups over the years, and sometimes it's me and sometimes it's them, and we're never sure whether we kind of debate back and forth. Should there be a punishment, if you like? Well, you have to pay for the coffee because you didn't make your goals. Or I know Michael talks about one group of 4 or 5 guys who meet, and whoever hasn't met their goals pays for the lunch. And then in other groups, they're not looking for punishment. It's already bad enough that they haven't done it. They don't want to be shamed as well. So how do you maneuver that? If you're not held accountable, what's the point of the group? But if you are held accountable, it's unpleasant, and that's no fun.
So I think a big part of it is we don't shame each other. If one of us isn't hitting it, we try to motivate each other. And there was an instance actually just a couple of months ago where Lisa was going on vacation, and she was like, I don't think I'm going to make my calls this month. And I said, Lisa, you've got time. You've got a week until you go on vacation. Make the calls now, and then you'll get where you need to be. And she met the goal that month. So it just comes down to being inspiring each other to hit that next level, realizing that none of us work at 100% of our capability. And so there's always something a little bit more that you can give. And that's really what we try to do, is push each other to that next level.
But the way our organization works is that we set goals, and then there's those that choose to exceed their goals. But at certain goal levels, we do fun stuff. We have rewards for our agents that meet their goals, and our goals are, we measure inputs, not outputs at the Houston Properties team. It is never about how many closings you have. That is not important to me. What is important is, what are your inputs? Because I know that outputs will be there if you put the right stuff in to begin with. So we measure inputs. That's why the calls matter. If you make the calls, you will hit the numbers that you want to hit. And for those that meet their goals, we go on a fun trip every year at the beginning of the year to celebrate our success. We'll have cooking classes. So we have ways to be together and do things that reward the behavior. So you don't want to be the one person who didn't meet their goals, because then you're the one person not sitting around the table having the fun conversations that you want to be having.
So even if you're not on the same team,
Yep.
but you're meeting with friends
Yeah.
or a lender or something like that, have a communal agreement about what you're going to do when you achieve your goals.
Yeah. We think that's great because it's a motivation tool. And if the group's not working, it's also disband it and move on. I mean, don't hang in a bad relationship because you don't know how to break up. You know? I mean, that goes on lots of different levels, guys. You thought it was real estate, but no, we do personal coaching here too.
I have way too much I could say about that. Okay. So I'm exhausted just listening to you talk about making 100 calls each and phoning each other and script practicing, and it sounds like you're working very, very hard. And quite frankly, I'm exhausted just listening to you. So that tells me that you must each have a pretty strong big why, and I think we would like to hear what your big whys are.
So I think you're probably going to hear all of us say family. That's what drives all of us every day, is just being able to be, this career, it gives you some flexibility that you can spend time with family. You can take a day off here and there, but the big why is the big why is just, it's family. But then also for me, it's helping people avoid mistakes. So I work with a lot of people that, they may choose to buy a house even though there's problems with the house, but it's having that conversation with them. And so that's one of my, I guess, it's a combination big why, is being there to help people through what's going to be one of the biggest financial transactions in their lives.
And to tag off Brad, of course, family is a big motivator, regardless of what your family looks like. But that's, for me, it's a big part of why I get up and do what I do every day. But even for me, I guess, extended family, so the relationships, I'm a people lover. I love people. I love the relationships. It's not even so much just, it's really not selling them the house. And I don't believe I sell houses. I help people. I help people create the life that they want to live and their beautiful little picture with whatever they want to do. So I just really love meeting with people, learning about them. And it's not just, okay, we've sold you the house, the deal is done. I enjoy the after, now we've moved in, hey, let's come by, check it out. We're having our housewarming party, but being a part of their life, and not just their life, but I end up becoming a part of the life of their friends and their other family members. So for me, that's a big why for me.
Surprise, surprise, my answer is very similar. I like people, and I like the relationships that I get out of it. And I'm also goal-oriented and competitive, that I want to be better tomorrow than I am today. And the way that I can do that and make a living at it is to be good at my job. And the way that I just like people, and I want to continue to help people, as Brad said, and become friends with many of my clients along the way. So that's my big why.
Did you all make vision boards? What's on your vision board?
So on my vision board for this year, actually, there's a baby on it. My wife's due December 31st, and so that's one of the things. Is just recognizing that I wanted to have a really big year so that I could take some time away and spend some time with family. And I'm actually going to be taking about a month off where I'm going to be just focusing on time with them. And that's really what my overall vision for this year, what it looked like and what everything else centered around.
We're also really glad that baby's coming in January. Because
No one wants
March
July.
through May would be a very bad time.
July babies are a big no-no.
So I did have a vision board, and part of what was on my board was we had a big goal to get to our trip, and first trip, got to get there. And so, but also had a lot of personal things for what I'm looking for in my life and keeping those things kind of present. So next to kind of my transactions and daily board, there's what keeps me going too as well.
I don't have a vision board, but yeah, but I do have a list of goals that set at the beginning of the year and evaluate them a couple times during the year to say, is there something that, while I thought it was important to me at the beginning of the year, is it still? Is there something else that sparked my drive?
Okay, so I'm going to switch gears a little bit. This was something that Michael wanted me to ask, specifically around sellers. Those of you who have sellers and maybe are having trouble selling that house and it's been on the market for a while and you would like to get it sold. So, in a shifting market, how do you help your sellers be successful?
By giving them the truth of what's going on and not sugarcoating that why you're not having showings, and having the information that backs it up so that you know where was the market last year this time, what was the prices, so that you have some information that goes with the conversation of prices are down, that buyers they're slower to pick up houses, they're looking for different things, and so you need to go down that road at a different price in order to attract the right buyer. So I think having those truthful conversations with your seller is how you help them, because if you just go in and go, well, I don't know, it's just slow, that doesn't do them any good, and you don't sell a house, and then they're mad at you, and then they call us. So
I'll agree with Lisa, the truth. And the truth may be having a candid conversation on the front end. Do you really need to sell right now? What is your motivation? I think it's really important to find that, because if they're like, oh, let's just put it on the market and see what happens, and we're going to give you this big price. Well, let me tell you what's going on the market, and do you really want to do that? I think it's important, the data, knowing your data, coming to them with facts, but also starting out with an initial plan. Like if you do decide to take that over a price listing, in 3 weeks or in a month, we are going to need to go to this price, and this is why, and this is what I'm going to be showing you, and I'm going to have conversations with other agents in the area, because you're not in a bubble. You guys are in the same market, and you're going to see, are they having showings, and are we just the only ones not having showings? But giving them that information, being very candid with them, because there's no point in being super nice and just, I don't know what's happening. Like, that doesn't do anyone any good. I just took over a listing that was like that, and we got to a price, and he was like, man, we could have been at this price in June last year. And I'm like, I know we'd already be gone, but we're not. And so they're like, so I found their motivation. They want to go to India. Let's get you in India. When we sell the house, they're going to go to India. Deal. Cool. Having that, reminding them of that, and having the data to support where you're going, what needs to happen, and then also letting them know, hey, if you need to put up your hand and say, I don't want to do this anymore, this doesn't make sense for me financially anymore, having that conversation and knowing where that pain point is, because ultimately buyers are looking for your seller's pain point. How low can we get you to it hurts to where you realize they need to do it? So it's about finding that and having those conversations.
So again, it's about setting the initial game plan, but not just, talking about it, getting it in writing. So in all of my listing agreements, I put in there, if they want to go in at a higher price, we'll do that. But in 2 weeks, we're reevaluating. And then in 2 weeks, we're reevaluating from there. Another thing is that a lot of people think, oh, let me get this listing agreement for a year. I want to make sure that, they don't go to somebody else. If it doesn't sell, I'm with them. Well, you've got to realize that you're not marrying these people. I mean, set a 3 or 4 month listing agreement. date them for a little while. If the house isn't selling and you're finding that they are unwilling to do what needs to be done, that's where you realize I need to walk away, and you don't continue going forward with somebody that's just sucking you dry, because all of us have experienced those real time wasters. Even if you get them to the closing table, the amount of time they sucked from you that you could have worked with 2 or 3 other clients during that same time. And so that's really setting the game plan, establishing what the expectations are for you and for the client, so that everybody's moving forward in the same way.
I think in this market, becoming complacent is very easy. You know it's moving slower. And so when you take a 6-month agreement, that's a long time. Like if you think about from now when it starts getting cold to when it's going to start getting warm again, every day is a long time. So people will ask me too, that we'll sit down. I just sat down with somebody the other day and they're like, you only want to do a 3-month agreement? I'm like, yeah. Because I know at the end of each month that I only have 1 more month or 2 more months left. If you don't like me, it's easier for us to break up. Maybe you don't feel comfortable in the middle of a 6-month agreement breaking up with me because I've done all this work, but it keeps me from getting complacent, and people will appreciate that. And if they don't appreciate that, do you really want to get complacent with them?
I want to just tag on a little bit. If you're taking a 1-year listing agreement, the only excuse for that is that you look at the market and you know that the days on market for that area are so astronomically large, or the price point of the house is so big that it's just going to take that much time to find the buyer. Because you cannot, when you sleep at night, do a great job for 365 days a year for someone. You're gonna get burned out. And the only reason you've taken that is to be selfish so that you can keep the money and the commission whenever it sells. That is not in the client's best interest. We have a fiduciary duty to do what's best for that client. And if we're motivated to say, I'm just gonna lock them up for a year, yeah, that's a terrible reason to start a relationship. And it means that you're not doing the right things for your clients, which is one of the reasons why historically we've just internally said it's 3 months for us, because my goal is to sell your house and move you on down the road. And if that doesn't sell in 3 months, then we can have the conversation. Do we want to continue to dance or do we not? But I don't want to lock somebody up to me or to the other way to have a bad relationship because I was being selfish.
Okay, thank you. Looking at your numbers, Courtney, you said that your business more than doubled. You're doing more than double now what you've ever done. So how do you cope then from you started off in a much slower moving environment and now you're sprinting a marathon? How have you gone from slow to rocketing?
Like, well, there are some days that I want to sit in the corner and cry and eat Oreos, and we try not to do that. I do take pity moments, and it does happen. Huge for me is priority list, getting organized, having that. Also, I've had a transaction coordinator, so setting that up as it was right for me has helped in that sense. There have been so many things that could have fallen through the cracks. So as my business began to grow, it was about being diligent, learning the things that I needed to learn as I went along the way. And then as I was able to learn those and then bring in the transaction coordinator, it was taking the time, because important on the transaction coordinator, they're not going to think like you. You've now taken another body and added them into your business, and you're assuming they're going to be you. So you need to be able to do that in a way where you can communicate and say, this is what we need to do, and this is what we want to do, and this is how we will do it. But that has helped me keep that going, constant communication with that, but also just priority list, knowing what's coming up, knowing where I need to be, going back to those priority lists, having a focus on, this is a fire, this needs to happen now. This is like a little match over here, it's going to be okay, and you can come back to it. So having that knowledge of, just because you're screaming and yelling at me doesn't mean that you're the most important thing right now, being able to differentiate that as things got chaotic and crazy.
I saw a very useful chart we went to a class together, didn't we, Carlo? And it said to organize things into one of 4 categories, and it was the difference between urgent and important. And things that are important are not always the most urgent, but the things that are most urgent are not always the most important.
Yeah. And
So-
the clients that scream at you are not always the clients you need to talk to right then. So that's a big deal too.
Lisa, what about you? You can't be doing that kind of volume without having completely mastered your systems and processes.
I have utilized in the past year, depending on the workflow and the work level that I have, showing agents in the office, and also a transaction coordinator. But I will say you can't have a transaction coordinator and just put them on autopilot. That's not an excuse. They're there to help you, but you need to run your business, and on that it's checklists. And so the only way that I can handle multiple files at a time is printed paper. For me, I need to have a printed copy. I also have, digital things in my calendar and things like that, and each file has its own checklist, so that no matter where I'm at, whether, when I get a phone call and I need to call that lender, I just pull out that piece of paper and I have the lender's phone number and email, so that I don't have to search through my phone for it. And same thing of knowing every single week, when I set out for my priority list, going through each file to say what deadlines are coming up, who do I need to call, what amendments are likely going to happen, so that I can time block my week as best as I can. So checklists, showing agent when needed, and a transaction coordinator.
And can I ask you just a moment about your 25 million? I went to a Buffini conference last September, and last year I did 42 transactions, of which 21 were leases. No. Well, my numbers are not what matters. I think it was 14
Those are
leases
impressive numbers.
and 26
a lot of work.
26 transactions.
That is
A lot.
And I did 8-something million. And there was a lady at Buffini whose business had doubled from 12 transactions to 24, and she was being hailed as this, look what Buffini's done for my business. But every one of her transactions were worth $1 million because she was in California. So there's many different paths to 25 million. Are you doing 120 transactions of $300,000 houses and 42 leases, or have you got 25 millionaires?
No, I don't have 25 millionaires.
But she would like them.
I would, absolutely. It would make less, it's the same amount of work, just less paper checklists that I have. No, my average price point is not $1 million, and I do several $300,000 to over $1 million. Yes, I've had some of those, but I think it's the whole work it all.
Yep.
Work it all.
Lisa's doing probably about 30 to 40 transactions, and we're in the 600 to 800 price point average. But one of the things that we believe in very much is being a geographical specialist. So Lisa doesn't drive to Galveston, even if it's $1 million buyer, because she doesn't know Galveston. So what service could she give to somebody in Galveston? She doesn't know what windstorm insurance is, or who to even hire to do an inspection. But she knows Memorial and Spring Branch and the Inner Loop really well. So go with where you know, because you're going to be able to add more value, and it will shrink your learning curve.
What about you, Brad? What processes are you using? How are you going to manage your 1 month's absence without having 3 months of zero earnings? Because that 90 days is going to kick in.
And that's a big thing, is what you do today, 90 days from now, you're going to see the results from that. So while I am taking a month off, I am going to still have to make some calls on a daily basis, but it's avoiding the meetings and the drive time. And so the way that I'm utilizing for that time, but also on a regular basis, is finding geographical showing agents that can help me in areas that I'm not 100% familiar with, or that I just don't have the time to travel to. And so I live in Richmond, so I'm nowhere close to the office, but I still work some business over here. I still work some business everywhere. But I find people that I can trust, that work in that area, that can help me. And then when it comes time for my client who has found the right house, then I'm ready to take on the big chunk of it, the writing the contract, the inspections, everything like that. So that's how I'm finding my path. And open house hosts is another big area that I utilize. So rarely at this point do I actually host an open house unless it's something that that my client really wants me to. Otherwise, I'm finding somebody that that needs to get out there and learn more about what people are looking for and find more clients. And those are the two biggest areas: is open house hosts and showing agents.
And we're so fortunate in this office to have 2 programs specifically for that. So either utilize it if your production is strong enough, or sign up and train for it if your production isn't where you want it to be. Either way, it works for every agent in this office.
Well, and again, I want to go back to Lisa's story. Lisa was an individual agent that wasn't completely working great for her, and she wanted to work things a little bit differently. She was a showing partner for 5 years, and then came into production this year on her own and went from 0 to 25 million in 1 year, because she was willing to spend 5 years learning the market. So one of the things I would encourage you guys, and we'll get into questions and answers, but as you're looking towards what you want your new decade to look like, start goal setting. But if you're not finding that you're in the right niche for whatever reason in real estate, there's lots of jobs within real estate. It doesn't have to be an individual single agent. You may find that you're greatly suited to be a transaction coordinator, maybe being a showing partner, maybe being an assistant to someone. Take advantage of the KPA. That's that online system that can spit out what your job matches are based on Keller Williams jobs in real estate, and that will really give you some insight, because your 2020 plan may be, hey, I need to look at real estate differently. I've been doing what I've been doing for as long as I've been doing it, and it's not working. So it may be that you need to just look at it differently.
I think, Brenda, is this correct? If the KPA is not generally available, you would have to ask Michael for it. Is that correct? You ask Brenda. Yeah, don't ask Mike. Any question for Michael should always go to Brenda anyway.
Yes, we all know that.
If you want a timely answer, send it to Michael. Oh, darn, is this being recorded? Michael is fantastic and will answer all your questions promptly. Okay, enough from us, and any questions from the floor? Oh, you would make it so far.
Hi, thank you guys for your time and feedback. My question is, I've got a ton of leads. I don't think they're the best leads. Where are you guys getting your leads? Like, I have a lot of buyers that are credit check people, and they're just going to take a while, and they're going to be lower end, which is okay, but I would like some luxury here and there.
We get a lot of those too.
Okay, good.
There's a quantity of leads out there. They're not all quality. So you gotta sort through and figure out which ones are the right ones. Typically, we find that you've gotta have at least 3 or 4 conversations up front before you even have that meeting, if you're really gonna try to figure out, is this the right person for me to be working with? So yes, there are a lot of people that we talk to every single day that are in that same boat, and we're finding ways to figure out, is this the right lead for me? Is this lead even ready to buy or rent or anything like that? And then figuring out what category they're under, and then you're either following up with them on a regular basis, or maybe directing them towards another venue for them to be able to find what they're looking for.
Yeah, and to point out, the 100 calls that they're making, they got a lot of leads like that they're sorting through. So you're trying to find the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow through weeding through all of the people in your database.
But what one thing could she possibly do, in your opinion, that might help improve the quality of the leads?
I would hold open houses in the neighborhoods and areas of which you know and can specialize in. Mm-hmm.
So I did a lot of luxury
Mm-hmm. Yep.
started switching down.
Luxury is tough, and you either know it and can do it well, or you don't. And luxury is typically not something you just walk in the door and do unless you have grown up in that audience. Does that make sense? And so,
doing it. I just want 1 or 2 viable
it's difficult to get to one or two viable leads unless you can prove that you've earned it, right? My first year in real estate, ain't nobody was going to trust me with a $2 million house. Not at all. They'd be like, you can hardly work your GPS. Why would I trust you with this? And you've got to realize your average price point in Houston, our average price in the city is what, $250, $280, maybe $300,000 at this point.
270 something, I think.
So if you sell three $300,000 houses, that gets you the same money as a $1 million buyer. So, and there's a whole lot more $300,000 houses out there to sell than $1 million. I mean, if you look at the $2 million plus market, there are maybe 70 to 90 of those houses a year that change hands. 70 to 90. The entire city of Houston sells 70,000 homes a year. So do I want to chase the 70 to 90, or do I want to get busy getting busy? So we always believe in our team that we want to be where that sweet spot is, because when the market shifts, luxury people have to move down in price point. So your $500,000 buyer is different today than it would be a year from now, depending on interest rates and where things move, but that market moves. So if I want to sell houses, I'd much rather be doing open houses in a market where I have the potential to pick up somebody. And that's also one of the reasons why our script trainings is so important, so that when you go to that open house, you're not practicing your script on the person for the first time. I already know what I'm going to say. I already know personality profiles. I already know what the market is, so that I'm making the most out of that, because most likely that's a 9-month cycle, and I want to be able to cultivate them early enough so that they'll come back to me.
And you're right that at that price point, an awful lot of buyers and sellers already have agents.
Mm-hmm.
It's not likely to be their first house they ever bought or sold.
Mm-hmm.
So you're more likely to come across people who don't have a relationship with a realtor at a lower price point.
Well, and what happens is, guys, people move up, right? So your first-time buyer buys a $300,000 house, and then they're single, and then they get married or have a partner, and they want to move, and so now there's two incomes, okay? So they trade the 300 in for 700, and you get the buy and the sell. Well, that's $1 million right there. And then they have 6 more years, and they decide to add cats, dogs, birds, and children to the house, and now they need $1.5 million in Katy. So you get to luxury over career in move-up markets as people are able to do more.
So I liked what you said about learning about the market, and I know I asked this in a previous class for the people that were in that class. Were probably like, really? But I wanted to know, when you say study the market, what exactly are the tools that you use, and how, in a sense, do you study the market? What does that mean?
So for me, knowing the market, when I meet with the buyer, especially first time, you should be able, let's say you're going into Rice Military Washington corridor. You should know average price per square foot. You should know if they're looking at single family, okay, what's the average lot size we're looking for here? You should also know days on market, and you should know what's coming on the market. So if you are gonna do Interloop, if you're gonna do Spring Branch, when you go into, Matrix, God, I just dated myself, Matrix every day, there are the new listings. So see what the new listings are. Set yourself up so that you get an email just like you set up buyers to let you know something new came on the market. It's important to know those numbers so you can speak of a place from a place of intelligence, and know land values. If you don't know land values in your market, you're doing your folks a big disservice, because we all know land is what appreciates. Land is where it's at. So if you are in the Heights, you need to know your school districts. You need to know the different land values that go with that. So knowing your market is knowing that information. And if you need to pull CMA on a daily basis, 6 month, and see average sales price, average price per square foot, average list price, that's what you do to know that market and to be able to talk intelligently.
And all of that data is available through Matrix. You just set up what you're trying to look for and then hit the stats button and it pulls it up. I mean, if I want to know what age 1994 to 2002 houses in River Oaks, average price per square foot, that's my criteria. There they come, hit stats. Da. It's buttons clicks. I'm not actually this English major is not actually doing the calculations. You want them to do that for you.
What's your one thing other than lead generation?
That what?
Well, I'm reading the book, The One Thing. So if there was one thing,
So she'd like to retitle 2 things.
because the textbook answer for the one thing is lead generation. But other than lead generation, it's like I'm a new agent. So a day in the life of, and so I'm reading the book, the one thing, lead generation. Okay, once I've spent the time to call the leads, so you said 2 hours of cultivating, then what's the other day like?
The rest of my day. For a new agent, I think it's education. Well, actually, even as an old agent, it's education. And so, like the lady before you, spend some time in Matrix, knowing what is selling. Go to the open houses, drive around, know what, and start looking at the market. And so, knowing your scripts. And so, with the calls comes the email scripts. Like everybody sends an email about inspections. Like, have that ready. And so if you have some downtime, but build relationships. And so I think that's more than a second, but hopefully you can grab one more from me.
Just one thing to add to that. So it's not just about sitting in the classroom and getting educated that way, but also finding hands-on ways. So asking an agent if you can ride along for showings, talking to an agent and see if you can tag along on their next inspection. See what the inspectors are looking for. Understand that those are things you can come from a place of contribution when you're meeting with clients and showing them houses. You can immediately point out, these things are things you may want to look at, and these are things we're going to want to focus on.
And I would add, if you have not watched every single one of Marilyn's classes from the last 2 years, they are all on the YouTube channel. Watch them all. Start 2 years back and move up, because there's going to be some information that's changed, but you want to be prepared in that way.
And after you're scared on that, then take a breath.
Yes.
And then I would also say,
Take a Valium.
offer, like if you're not in the showing agent program already, do that, because you're going to get to see houses. And then if you find an agent or someone that you like, and you say to them, hey, I want to help you, let's go together one time. I can see how you do this, and then I can be a showing agent for you. And then maybe you offer, hey, I can send an inspection for you, because there is so much that's invaluable from learning from someone else that's done it, that's already sat in the fire, that's already been burned, and then you just have to hear about the story after and see how they do it, and you can take that. So there's so many different things you can do, and I wish I had one answer for you, but that's definitely a great way.
I'm going to add to that. Yes, I absolutely agree. Going and accompanied somebody else is great. And the thing about us is that even when you've been doing it for a little while, and I still will go on an appointment with somebody else, just because obviously our profiles are so different. They'll do something or say something that triggers me to tweak my own presentation or how I talk through something. So just continue to learn and ask other agents what they're doing.
Because what these guys need most is leverage, right? And they're limited on time, because we only have 24 hours in the day and we do like to sleep. What you need is education. So what you can do with other people in the office is see who needs leverage, and then say, look, I'll be your leverage. Let me go do this for you, and in exchange, this is what I can do. So you help each other, giving where each person needs.
Hi, I'm Mary Jane. My question is, what are the pros and cons of joining a team, and how do you find a team that you think would be a good fit for you?
Wow, that's a great question. The reason we have maneuvered ourselves towards a more formal structure is that I fundamentally believe that with the shift happening in the market, it is going to be very difficult for single agents to do it all and be it all. Even as an individual agent, I cannot be all things to all people. And so working with others and being able to pass off clients that are not a fit for me or vice versa, and then being able to share resources and share marketing, for us, we are stronger together than we are as individuals. And so it is not uncommon for us on a listing presentation to walk 3 people into that meeting and say, here's your lead agent, and the lead agent gives the pitch and talks about it, and then the second agent goes, and I'm also second chair, and here are the things that I'm going to do, and the third agent says, and I'm the third one, and this is what I can do for you. So that our goal is that in the world of I need it now, we try to provide that for our clients, and that is not something that as an individual I can do. Counter to not joining a team is you might just not like being around that many other people, and that's cool. And so joining with people in the office loosely to have accountability groups may give you enough of that team fit. Most of the time people join teams because they are looking for leads, and we certainly have those. That is one of the things that we do provide, but we also provide training and education and scripts and marketing and TC support. So we try to give more than just what I think some other teams do. I don't know how you find jobs on other teams because I don't pay attention to that, but I'm sure that you can research. Probably the best thing to do is look up the top teams in Houston and see and go to their careers pages. We have a careers page on ours so you can sort of see how we work, but we do work a little bit differently in that all of our agents do production in their own name, so that at any point in any time if anybody decides to be an individual agent, they have a track record. That's very important to me as a former individual agent. I want people to be held accountable for the work that they do, and I want them to get credit where it's due.
I do know that if you are actively looking to be on a team, Michael is always talking to the top agents whose production is high enough that they're struggling to be single agents, and so you would let him know, and he would start having conversations with you and on your behalf.
And this is where our information is if you just want to go read about us, because I think you want to do the research on lots of different options.
Brad, this is for you, sort of, I think. I may have misinterpreted something you said early on, which was when you make your 100 phone calls, I think you said those are unique phone calls, and then you do another 200 phone calls after that. These are not, I'm assuming, people you know intimately. So where are the 300? How are you finding people to call that are not in your database or you already have a relationship with?
So it's definitely a combination of people that come. They're calling on my list on my signs. They'll come and look at my profile. They'll come and look at a property that we have listed online, something like that, where I'm getting a lot of people coming in. But so the 100 is unique people. So that's new people that I'm calling every month. The additional 200 I was talking about. Sometimes I'm talking to some of those people 2 times, 3 times. And so that's really where those overall numbers come in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like if you've got a buyer or working with a buyer that's active, you might talk to them 4 times, and that gets 4 out of the 200 calls. We track uniques and then overall calls, because what we like to understand is where are we actually spending our time and where are we getting bogged down. For a long time, we were spending all of our time on the 200 calls and not getting to the 100 that then is actually what's going to be your future business. So we track different ratios and metrics so that we can understand who needs help where.
I have a question. Sorry. Paige, I have 3 questions actually.
I hope you guys are ready.
No, it's for Paige. I would like to know what is on your priority list. That's my first question. My second question is, do you ever reduce your commission? And my third question is, have your numbers always been 100? Has that been a number that you've had in mind for the past 15 years? Has it increased? Has it decreased? Or is it consistent? Well, they keep talking about 100 calls a month.
No, it hasn't always been 100. It was much lower, and we realized that wasn't enough. And with our database, we had so many people that needed to be called on a regular basis that 100 still doesn't scratch the surface. So even if all of our agents in our referral network made 100 calls a month, we still have more people to call. The database is just that large because we've been cultivating it for so many years, very intentionally. But originally, we were probably calling 20, 40, 50. And then this group got competitive and like, that's not enough. I want to do this. And so we've grown it that way. Do I reduce my commission? Sure do. It depends on the situation. Commissions are negotiable. And it's a question of what do they want me to do? I've done flat fees where somebody comes to me and says, so-and-so, my cousin's buying the house from my mom, we just need to write it up. Great, for flat fee, I can handle that for you. I'm not giving representation on either side of this, but I'm gonna make, my time is valuable and I can walk you through the process. Oftentimes, if we've got multiple people doing multiple transactions, we will work different ways to do that. But there's not a standard commission, and it's a case-by-case basis. It also depends on price point and how far that stretches. So if I've got $1 million property that's gonna take me 3 years to sell, it's gonna be really hard for me to offer a low commission because my marketing dollars are gonna have to run me a very long time, and I'm gonna be paying out for all of that time. If it's a very quick, easy sell and we're doing another transaction, that might be something that I'm very happy to do. It's a case-by-case basis, but we always know what our value is, and we will never do it just because, will you take my listing at 1%? Well, no, I will not. And let me tell you why, and then we explain our value. And if they don't want our value, we're not the right people for them, and that's totally fine. We are interested in quality more than quantity. So if we all sat around, you will probably never hear us talk about, oh, I'm so happy I did 100 units. Like that would, my brain would explode, because we care about the quality of the work that we're doing more than the quantity for us. And then what was the first question?
What is on your priority list?
My priority list are making sure that these guys are exceeding their goals and performing at the highest level. That's my top priority.
Thank you.
So my question is any part of your team dedicated to the referral network within KW to get business from other markets?
We do have a transaction backend that handles that for us. So when other markets bring leads into us, those get reviewed and then distributed amongst the organization.
So what percentage of your business would you say that is?
Very small.
Okay.
Any other questions? No? We all good? One at the back, Tucker?
So a lot of us do like online lead generation through Facebook or anything like that. Is there like a trick that you have to converting them? Or is there anything that you do differently than just kind of a standard follow-up? We
don't do a lot of online, we don't get a lot of leads from social media. That is probably something we need to focus more on, but it just historically has not been my bag. And so we have a social media presence. We need to grow that, but that's not where our leads come from. We get a tremendous amount of leads as a result of the content that we put out and that Google picks us up, and that people are looking for certain information, find our content, and come in that way. So I would say from a perspective of social media, I don't know that there's a magic trick, but the better content that you can provide to whoever's reading your information, that is position yourself as the expert in whatever the topic is. I think that's going to be your best way to get better leads off of that, because when somebody comes in and says, oh, I really want to know about blah, 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 there you are, and they've seen that published by you.
Do you have a client referral program? What do you do for clients who refer you?
We send gifts to their office that are eatable and shareable with a big thank you.
Good strategy, I like that. Anyone else? Any other questions from the floor?
What CRM do y'all use? Are y'all using Command on a high level?
We don't. A CRM is something that I've had developed specifically for me as I was growing my business. So it's just individual to our organization. Question?
Are you thinking of branding it?
That is not on my priority list at the moment.
I think we should take a vote on whether it should be. Was there a question from the other side?
Yes, hi. You mentioned 3 or 4 conversations before knowing if someone is a good fit for you and a lead, or if they're going to be a time waster or something like that. What do you listen for in those conversations to decide on, okay, this person is clearly serious, or like, no way, I can't? Like, what do you listen for?
Motivation, understanding what their motivation is, why they're buying or selling, and then to go beyond that, finding out if they are pre-approved for a loan, finding out what their timeline is. So understanding, are they looking to buy in 6 months, a year, whatever the time frame may be. But motivation's what guides all of that. You know their motivation, it can help guide every other part of that conversation. And it sometimes does take multiple calls to figure out what their motivation is. They're getting to know you on that first call. You're trying to get to know them on a personal level, sometimes in a 5-minute conversation. That next conversation, you go a little bit further and then a little bit further. And then by the third or fourth call, you have enough information to know this is a quality person for me to go after. And here's the steps I need to take to make sure that they are also on board. So if they aren't pre-approved, having them pre-approved, getting them familiar with the idea of a buyer's representation agreement. That's something all of us have been focusing on over the last year, is getting people under buyer's representation agreements, because it's something that so many people go without them. And so that's another step, just to, once you know their motivation, you know if it's somebody that you're going to be willing to work with for a certain amount of time, and it just goes from there.
So if they aren't, right, so you realize they're not that motivated, but they kind of are, they are a little wishy-washy, how do you let them know that, like, you know, this isn't the right time?
So, yeah.
Or like that I'm not the right person for you, or, you know, like telling them.
Yep. I like this question. So, and I've had this a lot. Sometimes they're just not a fit for you. Like you just know in your soul it's going to give you a lot of heartburn. Maybe you know another agent in the office that you can pass to, that you know somebody who's going to, like, I don't deal well with people that are super overly demanding and a little bit unrealistic, but I know that there's a person out there that I know I could send them to, that they're very good at getting them to understand things. And for whatever reason, my positive flair just lets their, I don't want to say irrational, but their kind of dreams fly. And so I know another agent that is very grounded and then can bring them down to earth. And so this is where it helps to have that kind of setup to where you know someone else and you can talk about yourself and your team or yourself and your partner. And then it just becomes an easy, like, pass. Or you just don't call anymore. That's probably not the right answer, but maybe you just don't call anymore.
Thank you.
One more in the back, and then we're getting pretty close to time. And we want to be respectful since we've...
So some of you are, you know, new to the team. 12, 24 months is what she said. What does the next 12 to 24 months look, you know, in the future? Where's the direction you go from here?
I'm like, it looks a little crazy. We're working on that right now. So it's learning what you've done this year, planning on what you can do better. For me, it's better systems in place. For me, I need... I'm looking for a showing agent, some kind of assistant, someone that can help me leverage myself, because there's only so many things that I can do. So for me personally, I'm looking for an agent or someone else in the office that wants to come in, host open houses, got a lot of listings. That's something that grew extensively for me for this year. I think at one point I had like, 14 at one time, which was a lot, but that's a lot of open houses that could have been held and a lot of leads that for the open house host that we had. So for me, I know that's something that we're looking to develop, somebody that can help with that and come in and help with those types of things.
I think it's more of the same in developing ways, evaluating what has worked this year and what hasn't, and how I can do more with less time. So it's working smarter and more efficiently and figuring out what those processes are. But absolutely planning ahead for your goals for next year of what you need to do and getting a plan together is what we're doing.
And do your goal setting now, because if you do it January 1 and then you don't really get around to implementing till February, well, you've lost 31 days. So we start setting goals now, and then we work to review those multiple times of the year, because if for whatever reason any of us is off track, it's like a ship, right? So a ship goes on this course, and then every day it just gets a little bit more off course and a little bit more off course, and it's not a lot, it's just a little bit. And then by the time 30 days have gone by, it's headed to Ireland when it was supposed to be heading to France. I mean, that's a very big difference. And so what we try to do is review our goals on a regular basis so that if any of us are out of whack on our ratios and it's not what we want to do, we want to be able to identify that sooner and call out the problem sooner so that we can correct and get back on course so that we're all meeting our goals.
Okay, last question.
Yes, you spoke earlier about marketing dollars for listings. Do y'all have like a budget per se for a listing? And if there is a budget, does it change from price point?
Our marketing does change per price point because it just has to, and what you have to do to reach a $3 million buyer is different than what you're reaching a $150,000 buyer. So yes, our marketing budget does change, especially because we know it's going to be different. General rule of thumb is we spend about 1% of the listing commission on our marketing. General rule of thumb, but that's not 100% across the board. So it does change, but we work very hard to keep. My philosophy is commissions are coming down. I mean, margin compressions are here. Redfin, when you're listening to Pandora and they're like, list your house for 1%, and special things apply. Well, great. It's just they're just going to come down. And so I'm not saying that you need to give your commission away. I don't believe that you should. I actually think that agents are the reason why our commissions are coming down. One, because we've done such a crap job at being great professionals for so many years, and two, hey Karen, look, I know you want to buy this house. If you don't use an agent, we can save you 3%. Well, okay, so if I, the agent, have just told a buyer not to use another agent and save money, what have I just done to my value? We have done that for decades, guys. So at some point, yes, margins are going to come down. So our philosophy is one, and we've talked about this internally, we all need to be out of debt, because debt is something that causes you to make bad decisions. It is something that if margins do compress, especially the next 2 to 5 years, you're going to have to do more business to make the same income level. And so if you've got a lot of stuff to get paid off, do it now before that happens, so that when that time comes, you're going to be able to weather the storm well. And then work your budget. Don't treat your real estate business like it's your personal bank account. Run it like a business and set out what you want that to look like and where your time goes and where your money goes, because otherwise you're going to blink and you can do 100 units. I know agents that do this. They do 100 units and they're not making anything because they are spending it in all kinds of different creative ways, and you look at what they make and I go, well, that seems like a dumb idea. That's a whole lot of work for not a whole lot of money. So make sure that you're running your business like a business.
Well, talking of time and money,
yep,
we need to say thank you to all 4 of you, because time is money and you've given us the most valuable asset you have, which is your time, and hopefully it won't have cost you any money. Hopefully there are not fires burning all across the city of Houston's real estate.
We'll find out when we pick up our phones.
Yeah, in a minute. And I noticed that all of your phones were off, so thank you for that, for giving us that, because you were totally present, and it's such a gift to the office. And thank you all for coming. Thank you, Paige, for building a team, for sharing your knowledge and your expertise and being an inspiration.
Thank you for moderating.